Today, we are diving into the world of the very controversial and absolutely fascinating philosopher Osho. Now, we could spend this whole time talking about his wild biography, but Osho himself would have hated that. He said a biography is basically meaningless. It's just a story of your ego. So you know what? In that spirit, we're skipping his backstory completely and jumping right into his core ideas.
And let's start with a real bombshell, this quote right here. Osho's goal, as he put it, was to destroy all belief systems. It didn't matter if you were Catholic or communist. He didn't want to swap out your programming for his. No, his whole thing was to deprogram you entirely, to leave you, clean and innocent, just like the day you were born. It's a pretty radical place to start, and it's designed to shake up everything you think you know.
So, if you strip away all of those beliefs, what's left? Well, Osho argues that you're left facing one of the biggest, most powerful constructs in our lives. And it's something he spent his entire life trying to help people dismantle. This brings us right to the heart of his philosophy. What exactly is the ego?
Now, when Osho talks about the ego, he's not talking about confidence or being arrogant. For him, it's actually a defense mechanism. He believed that deep down, every single one of us carries this knot of inferiority, a feeling that we are, at our core, nothing. And the ego? That's just the mask we build to cover it all up. It's that constant striving to be something, to prove to the world and to ourselves that we're not worthless.
So where does that feeling of nothingness even come from? Osho points the finger squarely at society. I mean, from the moment we're kids, our parents, our schools, our whole culture is sending us the same message over and over. You are not enough just as you are. You have to achieve something. You've got to become a politician, become a doctor, make a ton of money. This drive, the thing we call ambition, is really, in Osho's view, just a frantic race to soothe the pain of feeling totally insignificant.
Okay, so this ambition, this ego-driven life, it seems productive, right? I mean, you achieve things, you get status. What's the problem? Well, Osho used these incredibly powerful stories to show that the ego is this insatiable beast, and its hunger is, in the end, totally destructive. Let's look at a couple of his favorite examples.
So he tells the story about a wise old sage meditating in the forest. He befriends this tiny little rat, but one day a cat comes along and attacks the rat. So to save his little friend, the sage uses his powers and poof, he transforms the rat into a bigger, stronger cat, which scares the attacker away. But, as you can probably guess, the peace doesn't last long. A dog comes and threatens the new cat. So the sage turns it into a cheetah. Then a lion attacks the cheetah, and so the sage transforms it again, this time into an even mightier lion, the king of the whole forest. The rat is now supposedly safe from every threat out there.
And this is where Osho's point just hits you like a ton of bricks. The lion, now the most powerful creature around, becomes so consumed by its new identity, by its new massive ego, that it actually attacks the very sage who created it. The ego, once it gets big enough, it always turns on you. And the sage in self-defense just says, "Be a rat again," and turns him right back.
And this isn't just some old parable. I mean, look at a modern example like Donald Trump. The guy becomes president of the most powerful country on earth. You'd think that would be enough, right? And yet, he was openly annoyed about not winning a Nobel Peace Prize, always comparing himself to Barack Obama, who did win one. Even reaching the absolute pinnacle of power wasn't enough to satisfy the ego. It will always want more. Osho used another famous example all the time, Napoleon Bonaparte. Here's a guy who conquered most of Europe, a military genius who literally reshaped the world map. And yet he was famously plagued by this inferiority complex about his height. It's a classic case of the ego finding anything to feel small about.
But here's the kicker. Napoleon was about 5'6", which back in the 1800s was actually taller than the average Frenchman. This whole short image was mostly just propaganda made up by British cartoonists who wanted to mock him. So his entire complex wasn't even based on reality. It was based on perception and comparison, and that is the ego's favorite game. It doesn't matter what you achieve, the ego will just find a new ruler to measure you against and tell you you're coming up short. Okay, so we've pretty clearly established the problem. The ego is a trap. It's this endless, vicious cycle of striving and never, ever feeling satisfied. So how do we get out? Osho is adamant that you can't fight it directly. Instead, he proposed a totally different path.
And this right here is the key paradox. It's so tricky. Osho warned that if you try to let go of your ego, you might just end up developing a brand new, even more subtle one.
The ego of being this really humble person who has successfully let go of their ego. You see the trap? The very act of fighting it just feeds it in a new way. So what's the alternative? Osho pointed to the path of the Buddha, which isn't a battle at all. It's actually much gentler. First, you just have to understand what the ego is. A mask, a reaction to feeling unworthy. Second, just watch it. When you feel it rising up, just observe it. Don't judge it, don't try to push it away, just watch. And third, and this is the really hard part, you have to accept that feeling of nothingness inside that the ego was built to hide. You have to stop running from it.
And if you can do that, this is the result. By just observing the ego and not feeding it with more ambition, more comparison, more drama, it just withers away on its own. It's not this violent struggle. It's more like starving it of the attention it so desperately craves. As Osho puts it so beautifully, a simple, gentle breeze of consciousness is all it takes for that whole massive structure to just collapse.
So why is this so incredibly hard? I mean, if it's that simple, why doesn't everyone just do this? Well, Osho had a very clear answer for that, because the entire system we live in is basically designed to keep our egos well-fed and to keep us completely, utterly unaware.
Just think about it for a second. A wise, self-aware person, they can't be easily exploited. They can't be easily controlled or forced into some meaningless mechanical job. Society doesn't want you to be wise. It wants you to be efficient. It wants predictable little cogs in a giant machine. A conscious person is by nature unpredictable, but a mechanical person, driven by ego, they're very, very predictable. And this has never been more true than it is today. Our modern world is basically the ultimate playground for the ego. You've got the constant need for validation through social media likes, the endless cycle of shopping to try and prove our worth, the mindless scrolling just to avoid our own thoughts, and of course the constant, brutal comparison to everyone else's perfectly curated lives online. It is a perfectly designed trap to keep us mechanical, completely unaware, and just running and running on the ego's hamster wheel.
And that's where we'll end it. Osho's message, really, is that this trap, the job you might hate, the comparisons that make you miserable, that constant nagging need for more, it isn't something that was just done to you. It's a trap that we actively participate in building every single day. And if that's true, then maybe, just maybe, the only way out is to finally become aware of our own hands laying the bricks.